I spent the night in the cursed Blackwood Sanatorium by Silent Screams. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, here we are. Blackwood Sanatorium. The words escaped my lips in a shaky breath, misting in the cold twilight air. I stood on the gravel driveway, my car a small, safe bubble behind me, and stared up at the building. It looked even more imposing in person than in the countless photos I'd studied online. It was a sprawling Victorian Gothic nightmare, a massive derelict silhouette against a bruised purple sky. Its shattered windows were like vacant eyes, and the ivy, creeping up its stone walls, looked like skeletal fingers trying to pull it back into the earth. For those of you just joining the stream, I'm Ethan, and this is Abandoned Echoes. Tonight, we're doing something a little different. No quick in and out. We're going for the full overnight experience. I spoke into the camera, my voice little too loud in the oppressive silence. The locals say this place is, well, they say a lot of things. Cursed, haunted, a place where the veil between worlds is thin. Honestly, I've heard it all before. But Blackwood feels different. My footsteps crunched on broken glass as I approached the grand boarded-up entrance. I found a loose plank and pulled. It groaned in protest, the sound of rotting wood tearing, before giving way with a loud crack, revealing a dark, gaping maw. And we're in! A wave of foul air washed over me as I stepped inside. It smelled of decay and damp, a century of neglect, concentrated into a single putrid breath. Not exactly a five-star hotel. I clicked on my powerful flashlight, its beam cutting a sharp white cone through the darkness. The light revealed a grand, ruined lobby. A once ornate chandelier lay in a tangled, rusty heap on the floor. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beam like tiny, frantic ghosts. To my left was a long, dark corridor. To my right, a grand staircase, its banister rotted and broken in places. Okay, so, a little history for you guys, I narrated, my voice echoing slightly. Blackwood Sanatorium was opened in the late 1800s by Dr. Alistair Blackwood. He was a pioneer in, let's call them, unconventional treatments for the mentally afflicted. The official story is that the sanatorium was closed down due to a fire in the 1950s, but the local legends, they tell a different story. They say the fire was no accident. They say it was a desperate attempt to cleanse this place of something that had taken root here. I chose the corridor to the left, my boots scuffing against the grime-caked floor. The walls were lined with peeling paint that curled like sunburnt skin, revealing dark, ambiguous stains beneath. I was heading towards what I believed were the patient rooms. I had my EMF meter, a spirit box, and a couple of night vision cameras in my backpack, ready to be deployed. If there was anything here, I was going to find it. I pushed open a creaking door. The room inside was small and bare, a claustrophobic cell. A rusted bed frame was its only furniture, bolted to the floor. A single small window was barred with heavy iron. Scratches covered the walls, deep gouges in the plaster, as if a trapped animal had tried to claw its way out. Man, you can just feel the misery in here, I whispered. Imagine being locked away in a place like this. What did they call it? A quiet room. Doesn't look very quiet to me. I continued down the hall, exploring a few more rooms, each one a monument to forgotten suffering. In one, I found a child's worn teddy bear, its button eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. In another, a set of leather restraints lay coiled on, the floor like a dead serpent. The weight of the place was beginning to press down on me. All right, let's head to the infirmary, I announced, trying to keep my tone steady. That's where things are supposed to get interesting. I made my way back to the lobby and started up the grand staircase, my hand ghosting over the splintered wood of the banister. The second floor was even darker than the first, the air noticeably colder. I found the infirmary easily. It's heavy, double doors hanging ajar. The room was vast and open, Operating tables stood like ancient altars under draped cloths of thick dust. Glass cabinets were shattered, their contents of rusted tools and broken vials strewn across the floor. A gurney with decaying leather straps sat in the center of the room, facing a wall of tiled white that was now stained a sickly, permanent yellow. This is where they perform the hydrotherapy, the electroshock treatments. All of it, I said, panning my light across the room. This is the heart of the sanatorium's pain. I pulled out my EMF meter and swept it around. The room. It remained silent, its needle dormant. Nothing yet, but it's early. Let's try the spirit box. I turned on the device. It began to scan through radio frequencies, emitting a constant static hiss that filled the dead air. I held it up. Is there anyone here with me tonight? Can you tell me your name? The spirit box sputtered and hissed. Then, for a split second, a voice cut through the static. It was faint, garbled, but it was there. A whisper, "Get out." I froze, the hairs on my arms standing on end. I rewound the digital recording and played it back. The whisper was there. Faint, but undeniable. Did you guys hear that? My voice was tight. "Get out!" Well, I'm not going anywhere just yet. We came here for answers. My bravado felt thin, a flimsy shield against the growing dread. I continued to explore the infirmary, my movements now more cautious. I found a small office off to the side, its door closed. It was in better condition than the rest of the floor, as if it had been sealed off from the worst of the decay. This must have been Dr. Blackwood's office. And there it was. On a large oak desk, scattered with yellowed, brittle papers, sat a leather-bound journal. Its cover was embossed with the initials AB. Bingo, I breathed. This is what I was hoping to find, the personal journal of Dr. Alistair Blackwood. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully opened the journal. The handwriting inside was a spidery, elegant script, a stark contrast to the madness it described. I began to read aloud into my camera. October 13th, 1898. Another failure. The patient, a young woman suffering from hysteria, did not survive the new treatment. Her mind was too fragile, but I am close. I can feel it. The whispers from the other side grow stronger. They promise knowledge, power, a cure for all human suffering. They demand a price, of course. They always do. I flipped through the pages, the entries growing more and more unhinged. November 2nd, 1898. I have made a breakthrough. The symbols they have shown me, they are a key. A key to a door that has been locked for eons. I must prepare the sanatorium. The patients, they will be the first to receive this new treatment. They will be the vessels. My blood ran cold. December 7th, 1898. The fire was a setback, but a necessary one. The fools in town. They think they have cleansed this place. They have only sealed the lock. The entity I have contacted, it slumbers now, but it is not gone. It is waiting. It is hungry. A deafening bang echoed up from the lobby, shaking the floor beneath me. I jumped, dropping the journal with a clatter. My heart hammered against my ribs. I snatched the book, shoved it into my backpack, and crept out of the office. What was that? It sounded like it came from the lobby. I cautiously made my way back to the staircase, shining my flashlight down into the oppressive darkness of the lobby below. One of the heavy, boarded-up entrance doors, the one I had just come through, was now wide open, swinging gently in a non-existent wind. I bolted that door from the inside, I stammered. There's no way it could have opened on its own. Low, guttural growls seemed to emanate from the darkness beyond the open door. It was a sound that vibrated deep in my chest. I backed away from the staircase, a primal fear seizing me. Okay, this is not good. I think it's time to set up the night vision cameras and find a place to hunker down. I'm not leaving, not yet. I need to know what happened here. I retreated back up the stairs, my flashlight beam darting nervously into every shadow. I found a relatively secure room at the end of a long corridor and dragged a rusted bed frame in front of the door, barricading myself in. I set up 2 night vision cameras, one pointing down the hallway through a crack in the door and the other inside the room with me. "All right, I'm as safe as I'm going to get in here," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm going to read more of this journal. Maybe it holds some clues about what we're dealing with." I sat on the dusty floor, my back against the cold wall, and opened the journal again. The camera's night vision cast the room in an eerie green glow. I continued to read in a hushed whisper. January 3rd, 1899. I have found a way to continue my work, even after my departure. The sanatorium itself. It is now the vessel. The entity is woven into its very foundations. It feeds on the pain, the fear, the echoes of the souls that have suffered within these walls. It grows stronger with each passing year. February 11th, 1899. A warning to whoever finds this. Do not seek what lies beneath. The old wing. It was built for a different purpose. It is a place of communion, a place of sacrifice. The door must never be opened. The old wing, I muttered to myself. I didn't see any other wings on the blueprints I found online. What is he talking about? At that moment, I saw movement on the small screen showing the hallway camera. A shadowy figure, impossibly tall and gaunt, flickered into existence at the far end of the corridor before vanishing as quickly as it appeared. The EMF meter on the floor next to me suddenly shrieked to life, its needle jumping wildly into the red. "What the hell? What the hell was that?" My voice cracked. "Did you see that? It's here. It's in the sanatorium with me." A scratching sound began at the door. It was slow at first, a light scraping, then it grew more frantic, more desperate. It was the sound of long, sharp nails digging into the old wood. I scrambled away from the door, my eyes wide with terror, fumbling for my flashlight. "It's trying to get in! Oh God, it's trying to get in!" Then, as suddenly as it began, the scratching stopped. An unnerving, heavy silence descended again. I held my breath, listening, every nerve on fire. A soft, childlike giggle echoed from the hallway. It was a pure, innocent sound that was utterly obscene in this derelict, horrifying place. I slowly crawled towards the door and peeked through a crack in the wood. The hallway was empty. I have to find this old wing, I resolved, my fear warring with a desperate need for understanding. The journal. It's the only thing that might have answers. I have to know what Blackwood unleashed in this place. Driven by a terrible curiosity, I cautiously removed the barricade and stepped out into the hallway. I made my way back to the infirmary, the journal clutched in my hand. In Blackwood's office, I searched again, my eyes scanning for any hint of a hidden passage. The journal said, "Beneath." He had to be talking about the basement. In a corner of the infirmary, I found a service elevator, its doors pried open. The elevator car was gone, leaving only a dark, gaping shaft. A rusted ladder ran down the side of the shaft, disappearing into the blackness below. You have got to be kidding me. After a moment's hesitation, I took a deep breath, slung my backpack on tightly, and began my descent. The air grew colder, thicker, with each rung of the ladder. The smell of damp and decay was now mingled with something else, something metallic and cloying, like old blood. When my feet finally hit solid ground, I shined my flashlight around. I was in a vast, cavernous basement. Pipes ran along the ceiling like metallic veins, dripping a dark, viscous liquid. I could hear a faint, rhythmic thumping, like a slow, heavy heartbeat. "Hello? Is anyone down here?" My voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. I began to explore, my footsteps echoing in the vast space. I found a section of the wall that looked different. The bricks were newer, the mortar a different color. This has to be it. The entrance to the old wing. I pushed against the wall. It was solid. I ran my hands over the bricks, searching, and my fingers brushed against one that felt loose. I pulled it out. With a low, grinding sound, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a dark, narrow passageway. The air that rushed out was stale and cold, carrying a faint, sweet smell, like rotting flowers. I'm going in, I whispered to the camera and to myself. I have to see what's in there. I stepped into the passageway, and the heavy brick door slid shut behind me with a final booming thud. I was plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my flashlight and switched it on. I was in a long, narrow corridor, the walls made of rough-hewn stone. The air was thick with a palpable sense of dread. I felt unseen eyes on me from the shadows. I pushed forward, my heart pounding until I came to a heavy iron door. It wasn't locked. I pushed it open, and it creaked on ancient, rusty hinges. The room beyond was circular, with a high vaulted ceiling. In the center stood a large black altar, its surface carved with dark alien symbols. The walls were covered in strange, unsettling carvings, images of grotesque, otherworldly beings and scenes of ritual sacrifice. My God. This isn't a sanatorium, I breathed. It's a temple. I approached the altar. Lying on its cold surface was a tarnished silver locket. I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman and a young girl. On the back, an inscription was faintly engraved. My dearest Eleanor and Lily, forgive me. A sudden, piercing scream ripped through the chamber. It was a woman's scream, filled with an eternity of anguish and terror. I dropped the locket and spun around, my flashlight beam darting wildly into the shadows. The room was empty, but I was not alone. I could feel a presence, cold and ancient and impossibly evil. The symbols on the walls began to glow with a faint, sickly green light. The air grew heavy and a low, guttural chanting seemed to fill the room, coming from all directions at once, from the very stones themselves. Panic finally shattered my resolve. I turned and ran, back the way I came. I fumbled with the iron door, my hands slick with sweat, and finally wrenched it open. I sprinted down the corridor, my own ragged breaths loud in my ears. The brick door at the end of the passageway was closed. I pushed against it, slammed my shoulder into it, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. The chanting grew louder, more intense. The very air vibrated with a malevolent energy. I heard something moving in the darkness behind me. Something large and heavy, dragging itself across the stone floor. I pounded on the brick door, screaming for help, knowing that no one could hear me. I turned, my back pressed against the cold stone, and raised my flashlight, its beam shaking violently. The light illuminated a figure at the far end of the corridor. It was tall and gaunt, its limbs long and misshapen, moving with a jerky, unnatural gait. It had no face, only a smooth, pale expanse of skin where features should have been, but it had eyes. Two burning red embers that glowed in the darkness, filled with a bottomless hunger. The entity let out a shriek, a sound that was not of this world, a sound that tore at the very fabric of my sanity. It began to shamble towards me. My mind broke. I dropped the camera. The lens, still recording, clattered to the floor, pointing up at my face. The last thing it saw was my expression, my mouth open in a silent scream, my eyes wide with a terror no words can ever describe as the faceless thing lunged for me. Then, the footage cut to black. And in that final silent darkness, a single, guttural whisper slithered from the speakers. "Welcome home."